On the glass ceiling, we take a look at the different barriers that women face as far as achieving their goals are concerned. These barriers can be at home, it can be in the workplace, it can be in politics, it can be in the church, it can be anywhere really. For every challenge that human beings face, women face times 2 of that simply because they are women. And for the past 6 weeks, Nigeria has been having a huge conversation about sexual violence and rape. A huge conversation. In fact, today's special report from my newsroom is about rape, and we're going to talk about that at 5 p.m. Look forward to that conversation. It will be really, really good. But right now, I want to talk about something I think is a gateway to rape. And that is something that you call tapping current. Like I said last week when we started this conversation, nobody is born a rapist. Rapists are permitted. Rapists are made. As a society, the things we teach young boys are the things that they grow up to think of and make them believe it is okay to rape a woman. And what is rape? Rape is not cuckoo only when the woman is fighting you, or you drag a woman from a dark corner, or you drag her from, some place where she's at a party. Rape is simply when somebody wants to have sex with somebody else and the other person says, I don't want to have sex, and you go ahead and have the sex. So whether there was a struggle, or whether there was fight, or whether there was screaming, or whether there was shouting, or whether there was none of the above, if one person has said, no, I don't want to do a sexual act with you, and you go ahead and do the sexual act, you've sexually assaulted them and you have raped them. That's what it simply means. And that's why you have, out of 10 women who were raped, the person who raped them, 7 of them, the person who raped them is somebody they know. So they were not raped in an alley. They were not raped in the street in the night. They were not raped in dark corners. They were raped by somebody they knew, either in their house or somewhere that they were comfortable with. But it didn't just start. How did it start? It started from things that we consider harmless behavior, things that we see boys do when they are boys, and we say, oh, boys will be boys now. He's just sowing his wild oats. He's just, doing things. And that's why last week I explained to you what tapping current was. If you haven't heard about tapping current before, because somebody on Twitter was asking me last week, Sandra, which one is tapping current? It's something that a lot of teenage boys do. And last week I learned that a lot of girls do it as well. And it's something that men continue to do. It's when somebody is using style to touch another person in an inappropriate way. So you have a crowd of people are pressed together, and you have a guy in that crowd next to a girl, and he now uses style to start touching her. Either he's touching her breasts or he's touching her butt, her bum. And Nigerians have a slang for it. The slang is tapping current. But what it actually is groping. It's actually assault. But we call it tapping current, and we make it seem like it's a fun thing to do. It's a harmless thing to do. But it's not harmless. Now, last week on the show, I started with this conversation that I had with Chukwudi the previous week on Community U Report.
And when I talk about how much society has failed, there are certain things that have now been normalized, like tapping current. Sandra, I went to a public secondary school. Mm-hmm. Tapping current was normal. We were raised to see it as normal. You tap current, my color, my type, my spec. Let me touch you. And it is really very, very unfortunate that many of us feel normal in such a setup.
Many of us feel normal in such a setup, he said to me. Now, I thought that was odd, and so I invited Tunde into the studio. And here's what Tunde said to me when I asked him if he thought that what Chukwudi had to say was weird, or if he thought it was relatable and for real.
Is absolutely spot on.
Okay.
Is absolutely spot on because, like you said, if you actually attended a public secondary school here in Lagos, tapping current was a normal thing. Like, if you don't do it as a young boy, especially within that period of GSS 1 to GSS 3, if you don't do it as a young boy, it's like you don't belong to you're not man enough, if I want to put it that way. So it's
the Jew guy.
I remember vividly back then in secondary school. So during break time there are like some stores where you have a lot of like crowded students just to get a tasty time, or just to get there's this thing again, just to buy stuff.
Buy
during
snacks.
the break time. So because it's crowded, so you just see boys in different groups, specifically going there to tap current.
I see.
And just touch, especially like I said, GSS 1 to GSS 3, it was actually like normal.
And just 1 to 3, you're what, between 10 and 13?
Yes.
If you're too old like that, you're
Jesus.
14.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And so young boys like that.
Yeah.
Where, how did they learn it?
So just like you've mentioned, and as Chukwudi has also mentioned, I think as a society and as parents, we've failed to raise the boy child.
But parents are not sending boys to go and tap
So
current.
here's the thing. From my own, this is the way I see it. I and my siblings are all boys.
Okay.
So growing up, I never had, my parents never told me to dress this certain way or go here or not go there, But I had female cousins. I grew up in a big family house. I mean, they were always told, do this, don't do that, sit well, you have to do this, you have to do this, you're a girl. Yeah. So as a boy, you're seeing all of those things around you. And you're like, okay, I don't think I have to do anything.
I don't have any responsibility.
I don't have any responsibility.
I just leave us where I be, they go.
I just freestyle. But then you see the girls being told at every point to do this or do that. I mean, do this or do that. So as growing up as a young boy, and then you get to that adolescent age where you're starting to,
explore.
You're now becoming aware of your sexuality, if I want to put it that way. So you have so many questions. You want to express how you feel. You want to express those feelings you don't have answers to. So what do you do? And no one has told you what to do and how to do it, or nobody has told you how, to express it. So you just like, okay. And again, especially in rural communities, you just go about expressing it. One of those early ways of expressing it is the tap current. Tapping those currents. So because you feel like, okay, let me just see how these things feel or how that feel. So it's so growing up, it's just normal. It's just normal. So that's the way I think that's where the problem is, failing to tell the boy, because for the girls, I remember when they start having their the monthly stuff, tell them this.
You can say period. It's okay. You can say period. You can say menses. You can say menstruation. It's okay.
They tell them stuff. But for you, as a young boy, there's a point to where you start having.
You start experiencing puberty.
Exactly, these changes in your body, and then you want to express them. So, but of course, because
you're curious about it. Your body is doing things. You're having wet dreams. You're having erections.
But then because you've not been told anything, and you want to express them, and then you've grown up seeing your parents or people around you, older people telling girls to do this, to do that. So for you, it's like it's not about me. It's about what she's done or what she hasn't done.
I see.
So for you, it's just like, okay, it's not about me then. So you just express yourself, because I remember vividly during that period, you see two teenagers who have questions that nobody's giving answers to. Probably they get involved in some sexual way, and then you see the older people scolding the girl. Instead of the boy. You should...
Or scolding both of them.
Exactly. Instead of scolding both of them, instead of scolding just the girl. I'm like, of course, as a young person, as a young boy, you're just growing up in that kind of society. So for you, it's like, okay, it's not my responsibility.
Nothing concern me,
that kind of thing. So I think that's where the problem is.
Let me ask you one final question before you go. Anonymous said something, and it struck me. Anonymous said that some girls back then in school will corner you, will tease you, will tell you you're not man enough. In situations like that, do you think that there are lessons that boys could have been taught that would have helped them handle that kind of situation?
Exactly, Sandra, exactly. Because, like I said, that period, just like 10 to like 14, 15 in secondary school, that's just that's that period where you start, that's when you've got into puberty. And
your body's telling you things. Your body's sending you signals.
Exactly, your body's telling you signals, not just for boys, for girls too. So now you want to express them. Like, for example, what Anonymous said. Now, some girls will actually corner you. If you're one of those, in quote, fine boys, they'll actually corner you. But then if you've had like a proud conversation about
with
sex. Probably your parent or someone or a guardian about sex, at that point you know exactly what to do or how to even go about it. And the same way for the girls too. If they've had, because most of the girls who do that also probably came from home or societies where they've actually not been, told, or they've not been, the conversation hasn't happened. So of course they just want to express themselves. They don't know anything. They don't know what they're doing. Just want to express themselves. But because there's no education on when you get to this point, you want to do this, you want to do that, this is what you should do, this is how you should do it. Of course, people just do what they feel like doing.
A friend of mine says that children are like crackheads, that their brains are not very well formed, so they don't know when to stop.
Yes.
And if as the adult in their lives, you are not telling them this is when to stop, this is when to stop, this is how to stop, they're not going to stop because they don't know better than to not stop.
Exactly.
Right?
And at that point, that point is like the formative years of
the child.
Of the child. Most of those things they learn during that period have like a very, very important, effect on their life as adults.
As they go.
Let me even put this in. While leaving the office to walk into the studio, I did a quick survey. Actually, I asked the guys there, be sincere with me, have you
tapped current before?
School? And they all said yes.
All the boys?
Yeah, 3 boys.
Have you tapped current yourself?
Yes. Like I said, JSS1 to JSS. I remember vividly, I went to a public school somewhere in Obanikoro. So whenever we close, there was this woman who sells tasty times and all those stuff. It's always, and the woman's store is always crowded. So we just like...
And the only reason that the boys go there is to go and tap current.
Boys always look forward to that point. We always look forward to closing time. We look forward to closing time, and then when we get to there, we just start, like you want to buy stuff.
But you really don't want to buy. You just want to rub up against someone.
You just want to rub up against someone. And so it's actually like, thank God for education and for some of us who, that's why when the whole rape issue came up, for me, I think as boys or as young men, we have a whole lot of unlearning to do.
Yeah.
We have a whole lot of unlearning because we've been socialized to see these things as normal.
As normal.
Yeah.
Tunde, thank you so much for your time. And this was last week, Wednesday. If you listened live, you probably called into the show or contributed in some way. I got a lot of messages on Twitter, on Facebook, on WhatsApp, with people telling me their own experience with groping, their own experience with quote-unquote tapping current. And if you're listening to this conversation for the very first time today, what went through your mind while Tunde was talking about the things that he talked about? I want to hear from you. 0700-993-993. What went through your mind? Do you agree with what he says about how we raise boys, what we're doing with our teenagers, how we teach boys to not take responsibility in a way that we teach girls to take responsibility? 0700-993-993. Do you think all of the secrecy around sex is the reason why we think that sex is something you steal? Because that's what rape is. It's stealing. You're stealing someone's ability to say yes or no to you. Do you think because we treat sex like this dirty thing where they're supposed to hide? Hey, we know they do, but everybody born picking, they go everywhere. Nigeria is overpopulated. How are you having the babies? Are storks delivering them to you? No, they're not. You're actually, So do you think one of the reasons is because we don't have candid conversations about this thing with our teenagers? Because here's the thing. every time that a conversation about sex education comes up, Nigerians are very quick to say, they want to teach our children how to have sex. But that's the thing. Your children are already learning about sex because they don't already hit puberty. Their hormones are raging. You heard Tunde say. Teenagers are very interested all of a sudden in the opposite sex. Boys are interested in girls. They're looking for guidance. And so what other countries do is that they have sex education. But that's not something we're doing in Nigeria. And so what do the boys do? They start to learn about the sex, but they're not learning from the people who should guide them properly. They're learning from seniors in the school who did not have anybody who guided them properly. So they're not learning things like, if you like a girl, you don't need to treat her like she's not a human being. If you like a girl, start a friendship with the girl. If you like a girl, treat her like the way you treat a guy that you like and you want to be friends with. Instead, what he learns from seniors is that if you like a girl, don't talk to her. Just stand close to her and rub your body on her body. You don't even need her permission, Seth. Just do it. Because he's not learning the right lessons from you, who's the adult, who's the father, who's the mother. And then your daughters as well, they're not learning either. And daughters have hormones that are raging. The person that told you that women don't like sex lied to you. I'm sorry. They lied. And when they're hitting puberty, the same things boys are experiencing, girls are experiencing too. But the only thing we're telling girls is stay away from boys. Close your legs. Don't get pregnant. And when you catch them with a boy, you shame the girl and you don't tell the boy anything. And then when a girl comes and says, oh, this guy came and rubbed up against me, you're often telling her, accept it. Because guess what? Teachers are not paying attention. Adults are not watching how these teenagers are interacting with each other. We expect them to just figure it out. And so you have a situation where young girls are getting groped and they're getting touched inappropriately and they don't even dare to make noise about it. You want them to beat them, ostracize them, shame them. And that's where the culture of silence comes from. So is the solution to this problem to demystify sex? Is that the solution? To stop treating it as this thing where we suppose hide. But you talk to a teenager and they're thinking about two things. One of those things is probably sex. Even adults serve. So if we shine a light on this particular situation, do you think it will bring down the need to do disgusting things like tap current? And even more disgusting things like rape somebody? 0700-993-993-993. Hello.
Hi, Sandra.
How are you? What's your name?
I'm fine. This is Remy.
Remy, did you hear the conversation with Tunde?
I did, and that of Chukudi as well.
Okay. Tell me your thoughts.
So, I think education helped someone like me, and I think Tunde said the same thing as well, too.
Okay.
You have to do a lot of learning. I went to a secondary school, a boys-only secondary school.
Okay.
St. Finbar's College, precisely.
Okay.
But notwithstanding, this time probably the evening tutorials whereby it has to be a mixed class outside school. You know, having your colleagues telling you to do that thing. So subconsciously it becomes part of your,
becomes
part of
normal.
You most. Yeah. And I think one major thing is this. I think parenting is the major, should I say, how to curb this is it starts from home.
Okay.
Down to school, then to church. Parents need to be deliberate about this. The boys are being left alone, and it's not really helping society at large. The boys are being left alone to grow on their own. Boys don't cry, boys don't show emotions, boys don't do this. So this is I think the ripple effect now, whereby the boys are left alone to grow all by their own. Fine, pubertal changes in boys differs from girls. We don't grow mammary glands. All we grow probably air within and probably our. But we weren't told how to control those hormones, where to channel the hormones, how to handle our emotions. And the example the other guy gave about whereby girls cornered you to tell you that we were not told how to handle such cases, whereby it is very rampant in secondary schools precisely. And the girls who don't know better. So I would beg parents, the present parents and those coming up, it has to do with you guys.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was having fun with that conversation. And my next question for Remy was going to be, what do you think parents should start to do? Because it's not just parents, it's also teachers, it's the guidance counselors, it's the schools. So you're a principal listening to the show, you're a school teacher listening to the show, you are a guidance counselor listening to the show, you're a mom, you're a dad. What should parents and guidance counselors and teachers and all these adults start to do? Because let me tell you something, whether you're telling them about it or you're not telling them about it, they're talking about it. So do you want them to talk about it right, or do you want them to talk about it wrong? And this is an issue as old as time. This conversation we're having, I'm not the first person to have it on a radio station or on TV or in a magazine or on a newspaper page. It's a conversation we've been trying to get parents to try and have. Is it time to finally have it? And have it honestly, if we're serious about stopping rape in this country? 0700-993-993-993. Hello.
Hello, Sandra. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. My name is William.
William, welcome.
Sorry I will have the conversation. I want to say concerning the issue of tapping current and rest.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. The issue of tapping current, to say the fact, is in the human nature.
To tap current.
Yes, it's not about, that's when the Chukwu is talking about this normal thing. Yes, fine. It's in human nature, but that is not the excuse of, that people will be raped.
I want to understand what you mean by it's in human nature to touch another person without their consent.
What I'm trying to say about is in the human nature is when we talk about man and human, if you go to the history of creature of human beings, God says that it's not good for a man to be alone. Just take a look at the point of when God creates Adam and he creates Eve. When it gets up without anything, it just look and say, oh, this is bone of my bone. That is biblically.
Yes.
When it come out naturally, you understand me? When you are developing some kind nature in your body as a human, you understand me? We have that attraction. I remember in those days, when I was still in school, okay, now for example, when take as a student as an example, when you are teaching in class, maybe you study about like biology. I remember when we normally teach something like we talk about reproductive systems. We teach about both male reproductive system and female reproductive system.
I'm following you so far.
Practically, when we teach in classrooms, do you understand me? We also have that conversation between you. When we talk about in terms of sex education, we are talking about now. Both teachers and students, they have that same conversation. But the issue of rape, I still notice one thing that since we are in wicked world, people need to change from their own ways. It's not about as a student having tapping current.
You don't think tapping current is wrong? I'm trying to understand what you're trying to say.
No, I get your point. I understand.
Do you think that tapping current is wrong?
Yes, I know it's wrong.
No, I'm asking. Do you think it's wrong?
Yes.
You think it's wrong? Why is it wrong?
Why it's wrong is that it's out of the content of the other person that you tap. You understand my point now?
It's out of the what?
Out of the knowledge of who you tap the current.
Okay, so the person that you're trying to tap their current is not aware that you're tapping their current.
Yes.
And that's why it is wrong.
Yes.
Okay.
But if you talk about the tapping current, is normal in human nature.
Oh, yes,
Whether
yes, yes.
it's a
No,
man.
no, no, no.
Yes.
We can't say that
Yes.
tapping current is normal.
Okay,
We can say that having sexual urges are normal. Now, what you
Yeah.
decide to do with the sexual urges, that's where problem can be.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I get you now. Because what am I trying to say is that that cannot be an excuse of rape.
I
Do you
agree with
understand?
you.
But-
I agree with you. But it's one of the reasons why rape happens.
Okay.
It's-
Now take a look at the example. I wonder when you talk about tapping current, even people that rape underage, what is the current that they are tapping there?
Those
Like
ones are
raping
those
underage.
people who rape underage are pedophiles.
Okay, then what are you telling me?
But you have a lot of people who also rape people that are not underage.
Hey, that's what I'm saying. If somebody is not underage, yes, you can even say, fine, maybe because of, I know the way you divine about rape, do you understand me? You know, boyfriend, girlfriend, they may rape them. It may be probably
They
this
may
one
rape
is
each
not in the
other.
mood.
Mhm.
Then, yes, do you understand me? They may rape each other. Do you understand me? I'm not going about that one. And what pains me a lot in the issue of rape is raping underage.
We're not talking about underage rape, though, but thank you for calling and trying to make a point on the show. You're listening to Hard Facts on 99.3 Nigeria Info. We're talking about groping. Tapping current is what you call it here in Nigeria. And I'm looking at how we can solve a problem like that. And I'm thinking perhaps the solution to that particular problem is to shine a light on sex. Is to demystify sex, is to treat sex like this thing that you don't have to steal. You don't have to chop and clean mouth. You don't have to do like you're hiding to do it. Maybe if we treat it like that, maybe things like tapping current doesn't occur. Maybe people will actually talk about these things. Hey, I like you. May I touch your hands? No, you may not touch my hands. Hey, I like you. May I give you a hug? No, you may not give me a hug. And you take her. Okay, he doesn't want me to give him a hug. Okay, she doesn't want me to give her a hug. But we get to a point where we actually talk about these things instead of just take. Because that's the concept. Tapping current is to just take. Rape is to just take. Don't ask permission. If permission is not even given, if you dare to ask, just take. That's what it is. Just take. Especially because you know that after you take, people are more likely to believe that you did not take than to believe that you did take. To begin with, people don't even want to have the conversation because it makes them shy. And they are uncomfortable and they want to hide from it. So what's the solution? What is it?
This is the Glass Ceiling on Hard Facts. This is the Glass Ceiling on Hard Facts.
I'm Sandra Ezekwesili, and I have comments on social media. The first one here on Facebook. Oh, I lost that one. But let me go back to Twitter, where we've got Olorun Shola Marvelous, who says the level of sex education is very low. Thorough education on sex from both schools and parents will put the teens and children in the right mind. Obashokwe says, growing up, this crazy act was a normal trend among students, but I always did not like it for any reason. I never did it. I was never a victim. I have seen it happen countless times. That's on Twitter. Also on Twitter, Temitokwe says, I was guilty of this in secondary school, and so many of my classmates were as well. Please help educate our parents, our children, and our society. We've got Emmy King, who says, Sandra, to be candid, I have done it before when I was in secondary school. How did boys learn it? Well, to me, I feel the peers trained them because their parents could not train them. Now, Nefertiti says that it has happened to her, and when it happened to her, she says that she was frightened and she was demeaned. Wale Bems on Twitter says last week he had to sit down with his 16-year-old boy, and for the first time he discussed sex and rape. My boy was shy, but I think it's time we had that conversation. I think the male is a victim of what their parents failed to teach them. We need to start talking. Wally, thank you for sending your message in. On Facebook, Godwin Eyang says, Sandra, I went to a private school and I tapped current very well. I learned mine from attending birthday parties when I was in JS2. I and my friends were always waiting for the weekends so that we could tap current. This has led to guys raping a girl that they met at a birthday party that they obviously tapped current from. Sharp Kid Flex says, I don't really think tapping current is the main feature of rapists. I mean, see all the callers. Almost everyone had an experience with tapping current. Why didn't they all become rapists? I think it's just the inability for some people to control their sexual urge that leads to rape. All right. Thank you, Sharp Kid, for sending your message in. And I'm sure that a lot of people who are listening to the show will hear what Sharp Kid said and said, hey, it's true. Sharp Kid, you're correct. Sandra, come on now. We all tapped current in school, but we outgrew it. We never raped anybody. Maybe you stopped doing it. Maybe. But others did not. A lot of men still do it as adults. Last week, I told you about that video on Twitter of a grown man, somebody's grandfather, who was touching a young lady on a bus while they were traveling. He was groping her. He was tapping her current on a bus. She filmed it because nobody helped her when she raised the alarm. And I can count how many women I know who have experienced that thing before. A lot of women have been in a bus or in a taxi or in a keke, and a man has touched them inappropriately. And we all know how they do it, right, ladies? We know they act like nothing is happening. They look straight ahead. They keep very still, but part of them is touching you. Maybe it's their hand or it's their groin. And they're touching you enough for you to realize that something is happening, something is wrong, but not enough for other people around you to realize that something is going on. And you find yourself even doubting yourself. And even when you don't doubt yourself, even when you know exactly what is happening, ladies, am I right? You're scared. You freeze. You don't know what to do. Because this thing is happening to you in public. And then there's also an element of embarrassment in there. You don't want people to look at you and think that you're weird or you're overdramatic. And the molester knows that. That's what he is, by the way. He's a molester. He's a predator. And he knows that in that moment, most women are too afraid to do anything. How does he know? Because he has been tapping current since he was in JS1. He has done it to dozens of girls, dozens of women. He has seen other guys do it to hundreds of girls and women. And so he knows exactly how women react. He knows exactly how women have been conditioned to react. Because that's what we're doing. We're teaching women how to react in these situations. We've taught women, we've conditioned them to react by years of not being protected when people touch them inappropriately. And so the molester exploits that. And that's precisely what rape culture is. Rape culture is all the things we do, all the things we accept that give people who want to rape people or assault people the cover to do it. Whether it's a man raping a woman or a woman raping a man. And it started in school. It started in the playgrounds. It started with touching a girl without asking her permission. (0700-993-993-993). Ladies, have you ever been touched inappropriately on the bus or in a taxi or in a crowded place like a market or a crusade or a political rally? Maybe it was even in a bank. I've heard a woman talk about somebody who touched her in a bank while they were queuing up. The guy touched her so much so he ejaculated in the bank, in public. So what's the way we end it? How do we end this problem and end it for good? How do we solve a problem like, oh, it's a natural thing to tap current, when it really isn't? It's sexual assault. 0700-993-993-993. Hello.
Yeah, Sandra.
How are you? What's your name?
Yeah, this is Remy calling back.
Remy, welcome back.
Yeah. You wanted to ask me what should parents do? The other time?
Yes.
Yeah. I think as early as, should I say, 1 and 2, parents, the father shouldn't undress in front of the girl child, while the mother shouldn't undress in front of the boy child, starting from the age whereby they learn to talk, because that registers in the boy's mind as well, or in the girl's mind as well too.
Okay.
Because some parents take their words into the bathroom to bathe with them. Those are another angles. Those are angles as well that probably make them see some things, then ask or try to access some things.
Okay.
Then parents need to tell their kids why they shouldn't touch the opposite sex body indiscriminately. They should be taught as early.
Oh, no. What's going on, Remy? Call me back if you can, okay? 99.3. Hello? Okay. Sorry about that. 99.3.
Hello, good afternoon, Sandra.
Good afternoon. What's your name?
My name is Bilat.
Bilat, welcome.
Yes, I want to share an experience.
Yes, please.
There was a day I was coming from Apapa. I was going to Jordan. I just want to say this and share this experience because it's not even only young boys that tap current, even old men. I wanted to enter a public post. We were all rushing. There was not enough bus on ground.
Okay.
Do you realize that there was an old man standing behind me and he was rubbing my back? Immediately I turned and I was like, what rubbish? Then the man started begging. I was like, wow, if an old man could do this. And the granddaughter or maybe one of the grandchildren just come to play with him in the house and nobody is there. I was just like, wow. I was surprised. At that time, I was mad and I was like, what? But I was scared also that, hope it's not a ritual.
Man, I'm sorry that you
At the long
experienced that.
run,
At the long run,
I discovered that this man actually was not even rushing the bus with us. He was just there, just to touch someone.
just there to rub himself against women. Hello, Bilal? Oh, Bilal, call me back if you can. First of all, I'm sorry that you experienced that. I really am. We've got a comment here from James in Ikorodu who says that Sharp Kid, the guy who sent a message from Twitter and says that, these are two different things. He says Sharp Kid should know that groping is what we call gateway behavior. Most people who tap current may not go on to rape, but most rapists started out tapping current. If that behavior had not been permitted for them, they would not have developed the boldness and experience to rape eventually. Tapping current normalizes touching other people without consent. This is the gateway to rape. James from Ikorodu, I wish I could ask you to marry me because that was beautiful. But if I ask you to marry me, my husband will say, "Whoa, okay, is that so? Is that what's happening on that your radio show?" But yes, James puts it perfectly. James puts it beautifully. He puts it beautifully. I couldn't have put it better myself. And the solution is very, very simple. As a society, we all need to teach young boys from a very young age to respect the personal space of girls and women. All of us, we all have a job here. Yes, parents are the main people who will do the job, yes. But they say it takes a village, Abi, to raise a child, Abi. So all of us have a role to play. After all of us, they join hand, raise girl. Anywhere a girl goes, somebody is there to tell her how she should and should not behave, Abi. Somebody is always reminding her about how decent girls behave, Abi. Why is it different for boys? I think it's time to start lecturing boys about being decent too. It's time to start teaching them from a very early age about consent. Let's teach them that anytime they want something from a girl, they need to ask her permission, not simply take it. Let's teach them that it's not enough for them to like a girl. Liking a girl is fine, but it's not enough to like a girl. The girl has to like you back. And you cannot do anything with that girl, anything at all with that girl, until she agrees to do it with you. And don't force her, don't coerce her. Let it come from her own church mind that she wants to do something with you. We need to start teaching boys that men are not dogs, boys are not boys, men are not beasts, boys are not beasts. Boys can govern their bodies, they can control themselves. That when they feel these urges, these very normal urges, they don't need to touch somebody else. You have to start very, very early. The training, you have to start it very early. And you can't ever stop. You have to keep teaching and reteaching every young boy that you know. That's because, remember, there are other voices in his life. There are other influences. He's watching older boys tapping current. He's seeing some adults tapping current. So every voice counts. Have you talked to your son about how to interact with girls? Have you ever sat him down and told him about it? Whether you're a mom or you're a dad, have you ever had that conversation with your son? How to interact with girls? Have you talked to him about consent, about dating, about sex? What exactly did you tell your son? Because those are the first lessons he will take into the world. Did you actually teach him how to behave with women? Or did you simply tell him, don't get any girl pregnant? Because bear in mind, if you don't have these conversations with your son, he is going to learn from his friends and his peers. And they're going to teach him rubbish. So yeah, the conversation will be awkward. It will be uncomfortable. But it is necessary. It may be the only thing that immunizes your son against some very bad ideas, like girls in secondary school cornering him somewhere, telling him he's not a man until he touches them. And he doesn't want to touch them. But in that moment, because you have taught him better, he will say to those girls, I don't want to touch you. What you're doing right now is harassment. What you're doing right now is assault. And you need to get out of my way. And he'll be able to do that without feeling like a Jew man. You need to teach your daughters the same thing. Because we're so busy protecting our daughters and thinking our daughters are not thinking about sex, we don't realize that our daughters are in schools cornering boys somewhere and telling them, touch me or you're a Jew man. So what conversations are we having with the girls? But more importantly, what conversations are we having with our sons? Now, it's not just your own son where you born, it's also other sons. Because like I said, it takes a village to raise a child. We have to keep an eye on all children, on all boys. When we talked about bullying some weeks ago, we said that one of the problems was that the teachers were not supervising the children properly to monitor their actions. And that's why they get away with bullying. Sometimes they connive with the students to get away with bullying. And that's why things like tapping current is still happening. It's because adults are not in the room. Wherever we see children and teenagers, we all have to be ready to teach them how to do things better. We all have to do it. We all have to step up and do it. So before we end this, I want to know if you have talked to your son about consent. Have you taught him about always respecting a woman's body and her right to choose who touches her? Tell me what you said to him. Tell me what he said when you talked to him. What did you tell him about dating? What did you tell him about feelings for the opposite sex? I remember in secondary school when we were learning biology about, the woman and the man, there was a lot of snickering. Oh my God, we don't want to watch it. Oh, come on your eye, come on your eye. Meanwhile, that's all we talked about. The books we read talked about these things. But in classroom, oh my God, we don't know. What are you talking to your children about? Or have you even not talked to them? Did you not even have the conversation with your son? 0700-993-993-993. 0700 993 993 993. There's WhatsApp as well. WhatsApp is 080-959-75825. We're going to continue this conversation, but we'll change it in a different direction from 5 to 6 because the newsroom prepared a special report about rape. And I'm going to talk to you about how rapists get away with it because as a society, we make it difficult for survivors to speak up. But that's a conversation for between 5 and 6. All right? Hello. Hello. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What's your name?
My name is Richard, calling from Lekki.
Welcome, Richard.
I'm a first-time caller.
Good to have you on the show. Why have you called us today?
Okay, I've actually been listening to this conversation about rapes and tapping current, and I think self-education, like you mentioned, would be a very good way, to curtail this. And I would like to also mention that the rising case of rape in this part of the world, especially Nigeria, is also as a result of the absence of our fathers. Or rather, the degradation in terms of our value systems. We are prioritizing getting so much of money, so the fathers are out there working. They are not talking to their children because the woman can do little. There's little or nothing the wife can do in terms of raising the boy child. The father has a lot to do in mentoring that child. So when the father is not always available to provide those sex education and all of those mentoring. So what you have is a situation where the child goes out there and just become notorious and being mentored by
older boys.
What's it called? Yeah, by other boys, so to say. So I think we really need to get our priorities right. Do we want to raise a society that is safe? A society, do we want to raise children that are well-to-do, or we just want to amass the wealth, make them comfortable, and at the end of the day, they become very notorious in the society. So I think we need to get, and that is also affecting us politically and otherwise. So the increase in rape, our fathers have to be in place. Fathers have to be in place.
What a way to put it. Richard, thank you for calling today, and we hope you call us again sometime. On WhatsApp, CK from Cotton says that most of his education on sex at that age was not from his parents, but from his friends, from books, from movies. Perhaps sex education is necessary, but the question would be, what will the curriculum contain and who will be in charge of teaching? That might be the bigger challenge, since children are very impressionable at that age, and a wrong teacher with the wrong information might be even worse than no information. That reminds me, when I visited Dubai, I was warned not to get close to any of the indigenous women, that I had to give them space. That was a culture shock to me compared with what happens in our marketplaces like Tejuosho. CK from Ikoton, thank you for being very honest with me. Caesar says, lack of self-control is mostly the cause of rape. Africans, we are so scared of talking about sex that we've forgotten to tell them the needful. I think it's high time we encourage... Okay, this is still daytime radio, so I'm not going to say that. But he says that, what he's recommending is one of the best ways to reduce the pressure of sexual arousal. And he talked about when Pastor Chris mentioned it and said it wasn't a sin, he didn't understand, but now he does. I'm sure by now you know what I'm talking about. It's still daytime radio, and, I don't want people to come and say, Sandra is talking about sex on daytime radio. Sandra, you're right, but do you know that girls... tap current as well? Both sex should be given proper orientation about it. Have you been listening at all, Felix? Because Felix, all I've been saying is that this happens both ways. This one says, if I train my child properly, he or she won't influence your child negatively and vice versa. I agree with you. Thanks for sending that message in. Kayode in Ikoton says, it's quite a pity that some girls at times make tapping of current easy by placing the contours atop the boy's shoulder. I see. Sandra, this issue can be corrected at home. I remember a day my neighbor, age 15, came to take a CD in our house, and one day she touched my penis. When I wanted to caution her, I heard her saying I should stop behaving like a woman, and fear gripped me. You should have cautioned her. It was wrong to do that. Like I said, children are crackheads. Their brains are not correct. And if you were an adult at that time, you should have said to that young girl who did an outrageous thing like touch. Because as an adult, as the adult in the room, your job is always to teach, to correct. There's more of a moral obligation on your part as the adult than there is on the child. It's the same conversation we have when we're talking about lecturers and students. People will say, but some students want to seduce the lecturers. But the only person with power in that room, in that conversation, is the lecturer. If the lecturer says, I'm not going to have sex with you, oh student, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. The lecturer will not be fired for not having sex with the student. In fact, the lecturer can punish the student for making advances towards him or her. So it's the same thing when it's a 15-year-old girl who is making advances towards you and you're an adult male. Or when it's a 15-year-old boy and you're an adult female. If you do not want to be charged with things like statutory rape, do yourself a favor and say to that young child, stop doing this, it is wrong. How dare you? The responsibility is on you as the adult who sabi something well. It's the reason we're not letting people under 18 vote. So if we're saying that if they're under 18, they're not old enough to know which political parties are the right ones, or will do well, how are we all of a sudden saying at 15, she don't hear she fit an act person? Come on now. You're listening to Sandra Ezekwesili on 99.3 Nigeria Info. This is Hard Facts. Every Wednesday, we have conversations on the glass ceiling about the different barriers that women face in the society, things that stand in their way of being great. Rape is one of those things, and one of the ways that people start to rape is by touching without consent. Let's talk about rape some more between 5 and 6.
Hard Facts will be right back.